Welcome to Zero Net Emissions from Agriculture CRC Partner Webinar number 4 and the last one for 2024 as we rapidly approach the end of the year, which I'm sure everyone is looking forward to. I'd like to begin by recognising the traditional owners and custodians of the lands that we are all on today, acknowledging that we are having people dialing in from all over Australia. I'd also like to recognise the Indigenous people present in this webinar itself and pay my respect to all elders, past and present, and acknowledge and celebrate the diversity of Indigenous people and their cultures, connections to country and waters all over this country. So last webinar for the year. We've had an extremely busy year, as everyone realised, given that it has been our establishment year. The CRC kicked off on July 1st, and we've had an enormously busy time getting the CRC established and running. Today, you're not going to hear much from me, luckily, because we've got some exciting stuff to talk about that you'll hear from others in terms of the progress that we're making around contracting projects and also establishment of producer demonstration sites and some of the other work that we've been doing. So I'll give you a quick update first, and then you'll hear from Ben, our research director, from Georgia, our COO, and Mick Taylor on the producer demonstration sites as well. And then as a special treat, we've got a presentation from Rich Eckard about a visit that he had recently to one of our partners at Broome. So what have we been doing this year? A lot, as I said. I'd like to acknowledge again the team at the CRC. We've been really fortunate to put together an exceptional group of people to form the executive as well as the research leaders that have been involved in the CRC throughout the bid process. Georgia will talk briefly about another recruit that we've made since the last partner webinar to really start filling out the team and adding a bit more capacity, particularly around our ability to do contracting and put projects together as we move very much into that phase, which Georgia will talk about as well. We've appointed the Industry Advisory Committee now and really looking forward to working with that in the new year to get that industry-led approach, which we're so keen on having with this CRC to understand industry requirements for our research and to make sure that everything we're doing has that industry connection and pull through to make sure that we get the adoption, the pathways that we're really looking for. We've been working really intensely over the last few months in particular with all our partners on the development of projects and putting project plans together and starting the contracting process so that we can actually start investing, which has, I'm sure you all realise, is really fundamentally what we're here to do, is to invest for impact for emissions reduction. But that's all been progressing really well and we're really happy with where that's up to. While we've been doing that, and it has meant, it's added to the intensity, we've been building the systems as we have gone along. So what I hope you will all see next year is as we actually start implementing the project management systems that we've selected and building them out, that the processes will become smoother, more efficient, because, we acknowledge that up until this point, it has been quite manual, quite hands-on in terms of the way we've been doing things until we build out those online systems in particular that will help with the efficiency of the project identification and the contracting process. Just a couple of administrative boxes that we've ticked since the last webinar. We've gained not-for-profit status with the ACNC, which helps us as well in terms of the way we can report and some of the things that we can do as a CRC. And we've also welcomed a couple of new partners as well since the bid, and that's been great to see that we've still got the very strong interest in the CRC and how people can be involved. What are we going to be doing next year? So We will be implementing research projects, which we're very excited about doing, and we're going to start with a really strong and significant portfolio of projects and a considerable investment out of the CRC that will set a very strong foundation that we can then leverage to build further outputs of the CRC and build the CRC in its entirety over its lifetime. We're going to be establishing the producer demonstration sites. You're going to hear a lot more about that from Mick Taylor shortly, and that's really going to start to roll out significantly in the early part of next year. What we're really looking forward to as well is the partner workshops and ongoing engagement that we'll be doing to establish new projects, to do gap identification, to really then, concentrate on how we move forward once we've got this foundational set of projects in place. The CRC, just for some context for everyone, our CRC was the bid process, and the way it was put together was very specifically done with a lot of early delivery milestones. And so when you all start to see the projects roll out next year, it is starting with a very significant early investment, very deliberately, and that was really contained within the bid to build that strong foundation that we can then leverage and build off to then move forward with more research, attract more interest, and build the outputs of the CRC over time. So a really important part of doing that will be to continuously engage with, to run workshops, to understand with our partners how we do leverage that early work to make sure that we are delivering on the rest of the milestones and other priorities as they come along as well, recognising that the environment will continue to evolve in terms of what we need to address, and make sure that we are addressing those things as they come along. So look, that's really all I wanted to say in terms of what we've been doing and where we're up to. And I'm really looking forward to handing over to the rest of the team to go through some of the work we've been doing in more detail. So with that, I'm now going to hand over to Ben Hayes, our Research Director. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much, Richard, and good afternoon or good morning to you all. Great to have you online. So I'll now move into what's been happening a bit more about what's been happening in the research space. And fundamental to almost all the research that's going to be conducted or take place in the CRC is predicated on the premise that we can actually measure greenhouse gases, sources and sinks. This is a key part of the research. It's also a really critical component of our producer demonstration sites to demonstrate the various technologies and strategies the CRC is developing do actually have an impact on these greenhouse gas sources and sinks. So the question arises, of course, how exactly do you do that measurement? And given we're fundamentally a measurement CRC, this is absolutely critical. So our approach to doing this is to actually procure a range of devices so we can do this measurement. And the really key devices here are flux towers that can measure greenhouse gas fluxes, and green feed devices for measuring methane from individual cattle and sheep. Of course, at these producer demonstration sites, there'll also be the measurement of carbon in soil over time. But as Mick will describe, I think, in quite a few of those sites, that's already taking place as part of almost routine activities. So just briefly on the flux towers, Peter Grace, Dave Rowlings and others on the call have an enormous amount of experience in deploying these flux towers and measuring greenhouse gas fluxes over long periods of time. And we're going to be collaborating in this space very closely with the Turn network, so linking in with them on their data analysis protocols, data QC protocols, and working with them to deliver Australian-wide data as well. So that's quite exciting. So the CRC will be procuring a reasonable number of these devices to be deployed at the producer demonstration sites. Next slide, thanks. We'll also be on the sites that have grazing cattle and sheep, and some of the mixed farming sites as well. We'll need to be able to measure methane. And as some of you on the call know, there are various ways you can do this, chambers, FF6, and so on. But in some of these fairly remote and extensive sites, really, just go back, thanks. The only practical way to do this is through these green feed devices. And various members of our project teams across the country actually have quite a lot of experience in using these devices. And you can just see some of them deployed in various sites. This is in Queensland, and one of my trials where cattle are actually entering the device and using it. So the CRC will be procuring quite a number of these devices so we can fairly accurately measure methane from the cattle and sheep on our producer demonstration sites. Yep, next slide, thanks. The assets, the green feed devices, flux towers and so on, they'll be deployed on the producer demonstration sites, but they'll also be available to the projects where measuring the different greenhouse gases is pretty critical, which is actually quite a large number of projects. So part of the challenge we have ahead is actually scheduling where those devices end up across the country so we can meet our project needs and also the producer demonstration site needs. Just to wrap up and say a few final words about the projects, I do just want to thank the project teams and the project leaders. They've done a tremendous amount of work over the past 6 months or so in building out, in some cases, what were quite good projects, but really building them out into truly multi-partner, high-impact projects. And feedback from the board and different committees has also helped that process enormously. So I'm just thrilled with the projects we have that are going ahead. I think they're the right projects for the CRC, and it's very exciting to see that they'll be launching next year. So thank you again to the program leaders and the project teams that put those projects together. So back to you, Richard, I think.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to hand immediately on now to Georgia Schill, our Chief Operating Officer, who's going to give an update on how we're going with the contracting process around the research investments we're looking to do.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Ben. Hello, everybody. Just a quick update from me from progress regarding our contracting and a few pieces of guidance which will be coming out shortly. So to support our partners with the contracting process, we have updated our funding guidance note, which we issued in September's newsletter. That will be included as a link in our newsletter coming out tomorrow. So that will hopefully support our partners by way of your internal approvals processes. If you have any questions or feedback on that, invitation to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to talk through that with you. In addition, we're preparing for quarterly 3 reporting, which kicks off at the end of January. So we've prepared some helpful guidance for you all on how to think about non-project in-kind commitments and contributions that you may have made to the CRC. So that can include things like working on project development, which I know many of you have done significant work on. So we'll be providing in our newsletter tomorrow some guidance around how you can calculate non-project related in-kind and a template to actually collect and capture that. In addition, I'll be sending an email out to all the key contacts at each of our partner organisations so that you can return that to me by mid-January ahead of the quarterly 3 reporting. So more information to come on that. And then finally, just some really exciting news. I wanted to welcome Sandeep George to the team. So as Richard mentioned, we are looking to bolster our contracting and project support with a portfolio and contracts officer. So this role will really focus on support for our program leaders and project teams regarding project development, approval and contracting, importantly, but with also a focus on systems development to support me with that next year, and impact and project performance as well. So Sandeep joins the team with a wealth of experience in commercialisation in particular, having worked in roles in that field at GRDC and more recently urban utilities. So really just wanted to take this opportunity to welcome Sandeep to the team and let you all know about the growth that we've had. So yeah, more information and links to everything I've just mentioned will be in the newsletter tomorrow. And if you have any questions, you can reach out directly to me. I'll hand over to Mick.
Thank you, Georgia. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Thanks very much for the time. We're going to do a quick run through the stuff that we have been doing in the PDS delivery phase. We've had a lot happen in the last month. So got about 3 or 4 slides just to talk about the delivery method, the strategy behind it, and the next steps we've got in the program. So as I mentioned in previous discussions, we had quite an impressive set of applications come in for the demonstration sites. We had to whittle it down to fit into 25, and there wasn't one single one of those applications that we couldn't have fitted into what we're doing. So it made it quite difficult. So what we decided to do is a way that we're going to sort of do a phased rollout. And this is looking at basically having the pilot stage and then moving into building up to a stack technology pathway. And then we're using a model called a hub and spoke model. I've got slides and we'll talk through them in a bit more detail, but the phase rollout is really important because what we've done with the hub and spoke model has allowed us to use and engage as many of the application or PDS hosts that we got as possible. So the idea with the phase rollout is we've got observers participating in each of the stages and finishing with the final stage where we've got some commercialisation stuff coming. Now, it's really critical, the PDS place. It's what attracted a lot of investment to this place. It's definitely what attracted me to the role here. This is a really unique opportunity to roll out some amazing research, but to do it on farm, on commercial scale applications, so that there's a pathway and a knowledge that comes with it's complex, and there's a lot of data and measurement and things that are going to go with that. So we've decided to go with a pilot stage to kick off with, and then move into the full speed as we get that all sorted out. Next slide, please. In that rollout, you know, the idea is that because there is so much data, when you start talking about 25 different producer sites around Australia, different commodities, different data coming in, different impacts, different interventions, there's a lot of moving parts. So the idea of starting with the pilot phase in 2025 was to work with we've selected 9 of the applicants or the hosts from the PDS application process to work with us, not only to start the actual demonstration sites, but with their experience and knowledge for their particular area and their commodity and their areas of research focus. We're going to use their knowledge to help us build the platform that we're going to be using throughout the rest of the PDS program. The idea behind that is that the first 9 come in, they work directly with us in a co-design place. Obviously, we want a national platform, but we also need regional context. So that's what the pilot's about. And during that pilot phase, we're going to have the opportunity for others to participate in feedback and events and things like that, which I'll talk about in the next slide. The second stage of that, the second phase, is stacking. This is where we're starting to put we've done the baselining on the particular farms. We know where their starting line is and what they're doing. And then we're going to start adding different interventions. So we've got 3, 4 different projects that might suit that area. We've got 2 that might suit something in the north. The idea is being able to apply them to that property, making sure that the data that we're collecting is accurate and usable, so that by the time we get to the end of that stacking process, we can actually clearly identify where the impact is, how big it was, and where the interplay between the different interventions sits. The final stage is stage 3, which is 2030, 2034. After the first 6 years, we're going to have a really good understanding of what's working and what isn't. We've tested and we've tried different stacks. We found out which ones have probably got the biggest impact and can be commercialised at scale. So those last 3 to 4 years we'll be working directly on commercialising the research into a scale where it can be used in as many places as it can nationally across many commodities. The biggest impact. So we'll be working in that final phase to wrap up the CRC as we head to 2034. Next slide, please. So what we've chosen is what we call a hub and spoke model. We're using a model for the producer demonstration sites called from a concept called Living Lab. It's been around for quite some time. It's known. It's been really well supported internationally as an approach because it's strong collaborative and iterative processes with producers and stakeholders so that they can work together in a clear, informed way. We are obviously aware that there's also challenges around that, but there's quite a lot of reviews on past Living Lab attempts globally where they've talked about different issues with technology and the cost of collaboration and the longevity of the program. The opportunity that we have here with having such a long project, the 10 years of the CRC, it gives us the time not only to deliver the PDS, but do some research and extension on the adoption processes so that we end up with a really good pathway that we mature and address some of those system shortfalls that have been identified in the Living Lab. But with the hub and spoke model, it's really quite a well-established model. The idea is that the PDS is the hub in the middle, and we've got producers, we've got researchers, we've got partners within the CRC, and we've got the actual pilot itself working together. Now, not all the time these guys won't be interacting together. It might be interventions or interactions individually between the hub and the producer groups or the hub and the researchers. But the idea that we're thinking in the staged approach is it gives us the opportunity to do to engage people in the design of it during the pilot phase. We work with those 9 hubs. We work out what the data looks like and how we do things, and we can get feedback off the other applicants from the PDS pathways. When we start getting into the delivery model where we've got field days and conferences and feedback surveys and things like that, the opportunity for observers, as we call them, that are going to participate around that hub, from service providers to other researchers to other producer groups and things like that. It gives us an opportunity to build awareness more broadly. And then we move into this next phase, stage 2. There's a good understanding of that cohort of what to expect, what the responsibilities are, what the commitment looks like, so that we end up with the second phase rolling out nice and smoothly with a cohort of producers that are really across what's happened in 1. They're happy with it. They've helped refine it. So there's a bit of ownership there so that we can sort of roll out towards the third stage of the commercialisation process. During the first 2 phases, we'll be able to identify what research is going to be commercialised at scale, but we'll also identify where the best sites we can use in those last few years to really drive that home. So the next slide, please. So this last month has been quite a busy month. We've taken our strategy of the Living Lab and the hub and spokes to the board, and we've had a discussion about that. And we've been given the go-ahead to start moving forward. So we've selected 9 hubs to kick off with, and as you can see by the map, they're fairly well spread out. We're in the middle of just starting to contract those guys now, and the plan is early in 2025 we will work with those guys to put the draft program and work plans and data processes, etc., together, with the idea of getting some feedback from our stakeholders. And also we've also got a steering group or a working group that sits with the board to help ensure that everyone's on the right page when we go forward. And by the end of sort of the first quarter next year, we expect to have these hubs up and running and starting to function, where they will sort of move into the phase 2, and then we'll start onboarding gradually additional producer demonstration sites over time. And whilst that pilot is running and the first sites are coming, what we'll do for those who aren't participating in the first few ones, they'll be getting regular updates of where there's events and where there's opportunities to provide feedback in what we're doing. They'll be invited to put input into different webinars and different design bits and pieces we're talking about, and also participate in discussions around how we're going to do that. And the whole concept behind that is keeping as many of those EOI applicants engaged as we can. As I said, they're exceptional quality that we got, and look for alternate opportunities where we can bring them in. The other thing that we'll be doing towards is once those PDS sites are up and starting to prosper, we've got 5 regional coordinators planned, and we'll be trying to put them sort of divvy them up around Australia so that they're to support as a middleman between the producers, the industry, the CRC and the researchers, to help do a lot of the legwork in that local area. And the idea is to have a localised version of a national plan so that we can make sure that there's co-ownership of it, but it does work in the regional thing and in the regional context, so that we end up with a really common set of outputs coming from that research and the PDSs. Moving into next year, that'll all roll out. Sort of our idea is to have the coordinators in by sort of around about mid-year, where then we'll start talking about a lot of the events and the things that we're doing. Moving into 26 is when the phase 2 will start. Those who have been observers and participating, those who've already applied for an EOI, they'll be brought in with the opportunity to align with their particular local hub that's around them, that's already operating, to get a good understanding of it, and then with the view to onboarding the additional hubs as we go along with that cohort that's participating. So all in all, a fairly busy year this year coming to an end, and I'd like to sort of double down on what both Richard and Ben said. We've had an exceptional run up in 6 months, and an incredible amount of work, but it's been a lot of fun. And moving into the next 12 months, we're looking forward to working with you all on that work that we've just spoken about. I cannot stress enough, if you've got any questions, we've sent around some emails to those who were not successful in the pilot round, and there's been a few reached out who want to have a discussion about where next, and my email and phone's always open if somebody wants to have a chat about it. But we will be communicating very early in 2025 about the next steps for those observer groups. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mick. The next section, I just wanted to give a report back on a visit that Phil Verco from the University of Western Australia and myself, Richard Eckard, did up to Yawaru at Roebuck Plains Station. As you would have heard from Mick, this was under consideration as one of our hub or demonstration sites. So Phil and I went there as part of our First Nations engagement, but also really important to see what they're doing, because they've got some really interesting things happening there. Can I go to the next slide, please? So Roebuck Plains Station is right on the edge of Broome town. It includes Indigenous protected areas, it includes heritage sites, it includes a commercial livestock operation, but also importantly includes the Roebuck Bay. And so what we were very impressed with was how integrated the whole system was in having cattle on the property, but also understanding the impact that might have and minimising the impact that would have on Indigenous protected areas and the bay itself. So just to give you an idea of where it is placed, right up in the northwest of the state. And can I go to the next slide, please? So quite a large area that was secured under native title next to the town of Broome. Includes land, saltwater, freshwater, so an integrated land management or land and sea management. Includes protected areas on the farm. So what really impressed us is how they've been able to divide up the land into areas of cultural significance, protected areas, understanding impact on the bay, but have a commercial cattle station with 11,000 head of cattle on what would be considered some pretty rich marine floodplains, with a indigenous couch grass growing on these plains. Very effective and interesting. What is also part of the CRC interest in this is the training and employment opportunities for young people on country. So the Aboriginal Pastoral Academy, which is jointly with the DIPERD in Western Australia, and the potential to include carbon farming as a training module within that that training course. So next slide, please. What's quite significant is that part of the land title included the Roebuck Export Depot, which gives the Yawuru community a fairly important say in the livestock industry in Western Australia, because most of the cattle from the Kimberley and Pilbara would be, well, not most of them, but a significant portion would go through the export depot, which is part of their native title and their business venture. So quite important for us to include. Next slide, please. But what's, as I mentioned earlier, what's also part of their management is the addition of the estuary, the Roebuck Bay. What is significant across the cattle station is the amount of monitoring they're doing of groundwater, of piezometers strategically placed through the landscape to measure the quality of water flowing out of the livestock operation into the marine estuary, so they understand the impact that it might be having and management around that. Also plans to include centre pivot irrigation that's currently under development, but really significant in the way it was planned to first and foremost have a minimal impact on the environment is determined where it would be sited, which is quite different. Last slide, thank you. So as Mick said, this will be included in the producer demonstration sites, which I think will make quite a significant First Nations engagement for the CRC. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. So that's it for the presentations, and very happy to take some questions if anyone has any. There's a Q&A function in the chat there if you want to put some down, or I think possibly, well, actually, I'm not sure whether we can take them live or not with this Teams meeting, but please put them in the Q&A if you do have any questions. Just while I'm giving a chance for people to put those in, just again to add my thanks, as everyone else has, to all our partners for the way that they've engaged with the CRC as we've been getting established and getting everything going. I can tell you that all of us in the CRC team are really excited about what's going to be happening next year as we see the results of that engagement come through. And you know, I think it's going to be a really exciting year next year as you know, all of that really starts to be implemented and on the ground. We're still going, so there is a question up there at the moment. We're still going through that process of how we will settle on the final distribution of PDSs. And Mick, did you want to make any more comment on that?
Yeah, look, yeah. So the idea is that with the remaining 60+ applicants, that we will send out how to engage with the current phase, and then during that time, as the research evolves and we see the gaps in where we haven't got PDS sites and the different commodities, we'll align the best sites we've got with them. So we haven't selected them personally. We know what's there at the moment, and then that'll evolve as each stage comes out. So once that pilot's finished, we'll start looking to say, okay, where's the next one fit? And because those PDS applicants are working with us, they'll be at the forefront of that selection process.
Thanks, Mick. Okay, did we, are there any other questions? Otherwise, I can give everyone a fair bit of time back. What do we got here? Yes. So is it planned to hold an overall CRC meeting in 2025, as was done in Brisbane on the 2nd and 3rd of May? Yes, that is definitely the intention, that we will have a partner meeting. We will also have an annual conference as well. just how those things are structured and exactly when they're going to be, we're still working on, but we will definitely be having a partner meeting, a face-to-face, an in-person partner meeting. It'll be really important that we continue to do that for a number of reasons, to provide just the straight up engagement opportunity, but to use that to have things like workshops, in-person workshops, where we can continue to workshop the priorities, about how we're going to work together, about what the project ideas are, and so on. Unsure where it's going to be yet or what time of year we're going to be, but I can tell you that that will all be decided on very early in the new year, and we'll make sure we communicate that very early so that people know when and where it's going to be. How do partners express an interest in such workshops that we're going to be having? So look, we will ensure that once we have a program of workshops in place for how we're going to continue to address milestones, we will communicate that really widely to our partner network, but also contact directly to make sure all our partners, just as part of the ongoing engagement process, to make sure they're aware of those opportunities and that they're capturing those engagement opportunities as they come up. The list of successful PDS, when will the list of successful PDS sites be made available? So I'm sure that you'd appreciate that, while we're actually in the contracting phase itself, we just need to make sure that, we get that settled and that there are no issues around that once we, but as we're working on doing that as quickly as we can. And once the contract, once we're confident that the contracts are going to be settled, then we'll make those announcements as quickly as we can. And we'd be hoping, it's certainly in the first quarter of next year, and really quite soon in the new year, that we'd be able to publicise those sites. Okay, I think that might be it. So thank you everyone for attending today. I hope everyone has a great break, enjoys the holidays. I've got one more post there. Program 2 includes novel individual animal methane measurements. Is there scope in sub-project for novel mob level emissions measurement? Ben, you might want to address that.
Yes, there certainly is. And some of the PDS sites already have gear that's appropriate to do that. It really depends on the technology that's being tested. So you can imagine if it's different pasture plots and cattle grazing different plots, some of those mob level devices are appropriate. But if you're measuring, say, selection of individual animals, then you have to do it at the individual level. So it'll just be a case of what experiment and what technologies are actually being rolled out.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, so again, just to wrap it up, thanks everyone for joining. Just to notice there that our office will be closed from the 23rd of December and open up back again on the 6th of January. Looking forward to speaking to everyone in the new year. Have a great break and speak to you all again soon. Thank you.